My God. All right. Well, hey everybody. How's it going? Hi. My name is Jonathan Dumas. I am with the doc, Dr. Haywood. How are you doing, Dr. Haywood?
I'm good. I'm good. So glad to be here with you.
Yeah, this is so fun. This is actually a long time coming. I'm really glad that both of our schedules, the stars aligned, our schedules got together,
Life
and we
was
were able
life.
to. Yeah, you know what? Life be life, and it's all right. But good thing that it's like nothing. It's just like life is heavy. Anyways, so we are having a conversation around community cultural wealth, and I'm really excited about this because like it came into my life. It's always been in my life, but like I didn't understand it. I knew that there was like a framework for this until um, my wife actually introduced me to Dr. Yosso's community cultural wealth. So I'm really excited to talk to you about this, and I know that you have extensive knowledge on this and you do your work on this. So you actually blew my mind on something before we got into the call. It's like community cultural wealth is actually the reason why we met. So I would love for you to just like share that, break that down. That'd be so dope. Wait, I didn't introduce myself. I'm
Okay.
gonna introduce myself. So, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Jonathan Dumas. I am a career transition coach, podcast host, and organizational psychologist. I do work with Black millennials who want to experience career joy. So I help them in their career transition work. I also am an organizational psychologist, and I am co-owner of a company called Common Culture, where we do organizational development, effectiveness, and trainings for leaders trying to create thriving companies. So I'm really
Love
excited
it.
to dive into this more. But Dr. Haywood, go ahead and introduce yourself and how we kind of met.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Hayley Haywood. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an equity solutionist and identity conscious coach, which basically means I help people reclaim their power while they're navigating systems of power and use that in anti oppressive ways. So
Mm.
I do coaching, consulting through an identity conscious lens. And I have an extensive background in higher education and working with mission driven organizations. So, really excited to be here and especially excited to have come in contact with you, Jonathan,
Yeah.
through a space that was actually created by um, Carissa B. What's her last name?
Yeah. Oh, Begonia. Shout out,
Begonia.
Chris.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shout out to Carissa,
Yeah.
who created this space for entrepreneurs of color to come together to build community, but also just to build relationships. Right? Like we don't necessarily need to start with the things we do. We started with who we were, and that was such a great way for Jonathan and I to find the synergies among our work. And here we are today. And who knows what kinds of collaborations will come in the future. So definitely grateful for you, Carissa, and grateful for you too, Jonathan, for
Absolutely.
partnering with me on this.
Absolutely. Super excited. This is so cool. So that's like just a little bit of a taste of how like community cultural wealth like shows up. But I'm curious, like, let's like, well, not let's, because let's would assume that I'm breaking it down. I'm gonna leave that to you to break down for folks what community cultural wealth really is. Um, yeah, so I'm gonna let you to do that. So I'm gonna give you the stage to help folks out with that.
For sure. Yeah, you want to pull up a couple slides so
I
folks
got
can
you. I
get a
got you.
visual?
Yeah, let me do
Awesome.
that. All right. It's almost like we rehearsed all of this, right? Let's see. There it is. Can you see it?
Great. Perfect. Yes, I see it.
Awesome.
Awesome. So, community cultural wealth really is grounded in critical race theory, which basically says that race and racism influence everything we do and everything we are, right? There's no escaping it. And so, community cultural wealth really came about because when we think about the more common ways that we think about capital in society, right? People talk about social capital, they talk about financial capital. And the thing about social capital is in this capitalistic world, I keep saying the word capital because that's very relevant here.
Yeah.
um, Really, the dominant narrative says that relationships are only valuable if they get us to a place where we're either building wealth or getting opportunities that help us access wealth, right?
Mm,
So, like, relationships that lead to internships or relationships that lead to job opportunities or financial partnerships, right? And that's such a like icky way of valuing the relationships that we have. Not
mm,
saying that that type of relationship is not also valuable, right? But Yoso says it's not that communities of color don't have wealth. It's that the wealth and the capital that we bring into spaces is constantly undervalued and dismissed by these dominant ways of thinking, right? And so she challenges that because oftentimes, we're looked at through a deficit lens. So people are focused on what we don't have, especially in the school systems, which is where, my background is. Oftentimes they're talking about what students of color don't have. Well, they don't have the capital to be successful in these systems. And we problematize the people as opposed to problematizing the systems,
Mm-hmm.
right? So Yosso identified these 6 different forms of community cultural wealth that really speak to the different ways that to survive these dominant systems, we have had to develop new ways of thriving and like new forms of capital.
Okay, here we go. Navigational capital.
All right, so the first one you'll see here is navigational capital. So that's moving through either campuses or workplaces that were designed to exclude us using agency and ingenuity, right? So you could call it life hacks. When you find maybe that other um, the only other black person at work, right? And they're like, oh, hey, here's how I deal with so and so because this person can be a little prickly, right? Like that's a form of navigational capital because they're helping you figure out how to survive in a harmful, often hostile workplace.
Mm.
Then we have resistant capital. So you can go to the next one. And that's really a willingness that we are able to show up as our full selves, to advocate for ourselves. It might look like negotiating when you get a job offer. That's you exercising resistant capital. Rocking that fit, right? If you know that, oh, people are going to judge me for this, but I'm going to wear it anyway. Sometimes it's rocking your natural curls, right? Like all of these different ways that we show up as our authentic selves, knowing that the status quo doesn't always celebrate and oftentimes devalues what that looks like and how we show up. We do it anyway, right? Because we know our own internal greatness, and that is a form of resistant capital.
Listen, when you said internal greatness, come on now. Spitting. All right.
And then we have familial capital. So, this is especially relevant when oftentimes, especially in higher ed, people are talking about first gen students, right? And what their parents don't bring. Oh, their parents don't support them, right? And that is certainly a narrative that exists out there. And I don't want to dismiss anyone's truth if that has been your experience. But our families, in a lot of cases, support us in other ways, right? And so familial capital is acknowledging that intergenerational wisdom that we get from our families. So things like, in a Black family where the parents have to sit their child down and talk about, here's how you react when you interact with the police. That is a form of life-saving capital,
Mm.
right? And it's not always valued in the workplace or in the schools. But I'm going to tell you, if I'm encountering the police, that type of capital is more valuable to me than the internship that so-and-so's father gave them sitting on the phone all day and not really actually learning anything, right? So familial capital definitely is something that we want to celebrate and honor what our families can bring, whether they do or don't have, formalized college degrees or fancy careers.
Awesome. All right, moving on to linguistic capital.
Yeah, linguistic capital is the ability to communicate and connect with folks across different dialects, languages, communities, right? And so the most common thing we think about is the ability to speak multiple languages, but also I think about things like, you know, African American vernacular English, right?
Mm.
Like being able to show up and connect in ways that in an instant, oh, like we're on the same page. You walk into the room, you see another person, you make eye contact, you kind of just know. That's a form of capital. And that kind of leads to social capital.
Yep. Would that include like the nod, that the black nod or whatever in that linguistic capital?
Yeah, I would say that, or even that's a form of social capital too. When you can walk into a room, you see that person, you do the nod, you get each other, that instantly you have that connection, right? That's a
Mm.
form of social capital. And I think that kind of underscores the value of making sure we're hiring diverse leaders because we can connect with folks specifically from our communities in ways that other people can't. And so being able to make sure that you have people who can do that outreach in ways that resonate with the different communities you want to impact can really be an asset in different organizations.
I love that. Are we switching to aspirational now?
Yeah, let's do
Okay,
it.
let's do it. All right.
So, aspirational capital is this ability to see beyond what is, right? So, many of us have been the first or the only in a workplace, in an organization, maybe on a sports team, right? That aspirational capital told you that even if this isn't the most ideal conditions, I can see what's possible if I'm here, right? So, being able to dream boldly is really a form of capital that we need to celebrate.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm learning so much. I don't think I've actually heard it broken down in the way that you're doing, because the way you read it, and I'm like, I think I understand it, I think I get it, and the way you break it down, it's like it's outside of that like academic like language, and it's really really
Mhm.
digestible. So I'm as a co person like having a conversation with you, I'm getting a lot. Just FYI.
I'm so glad. That's it's all about elevating access, which I didn't say is my company. So,
Awesome.
we out here learning.
Yeah, we really are. We
Self
really really
promotion
are.
is not always something that comes naturally to us, right? We're working on it.
I know, I know. Are we done with this, or do you want to keep with
Yeah,
this
no, I
stuff?
think, we wanted to make sure folks had an overview to bring people
Sure.
along to elevate access, right, to this theory, to this framework. So,
Mm.
Jonathan, I would love to hear, I know you've done some reflection on this. So, how have you seen community cultural wealth show up in your life?
Yeah, well, like I mentioned, it's funny. I've been operating in some way, shape, or form a lot of these different dynamics most of my life, right? Just having to um, a form of resistant capital that I didn't even realize would like show up as resistant capital is like even now the way I like come to like business meetings, the way I show up, like natural hair, all this other stuff. It's like I didn't realize that that was hey, you better flip it, flip that hair. That I didn't realize I was doing like a form of resistance, even though internally I was like, that's how I'm showing up. That's what I feel internally of like, I go to my closet and I look at like, all right, what am I going to wear? Oh, I'm going to wear that I belong in this room t-shirt. Yeah. And then I'll put like a nice jacket over it. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to wear, my glasses or whatever, and have my kinks and curls all the way out. Right. Looking
All
all
the way
juicy and
out. Love
all the
it.
way out, looking all juicy and delicious, and like present this very high level organizational development effectiveness stuff, and like I am still quote unquote professional, right? um and I've always actually, even when I see another black person, I like not only give them that nod, but I also want to help make sure that they thrive in often very very white spaces. So what can I do? Like, here's my business card, here's my email, this person is whatever, like, if you need something, I got you. It just really like learning how to like navigate and support in any kind of way, which is, again, I didn't realize specifically before that that's what community culture wealth was. I was just doing these things because I was like, I want to, survive, and like I know that like I'm gonna just show up and be me, regardless. But also helping other people like thrive and know that what you bring to the table is important, and so on and so forth. And then
And
even
that's like,
lastly, go ahead. No.
I was just gonna say that piece around like you knew it was happening, but like this gives you the language to name it, which I think can
Mm,
be like a really key tool for us to be able to have that toolbox, right? To be able to say, this is what this is and claim that.
exactly. Exactly. That's so huge. And I think even to your point, shout out to you with the name elevating access, right? Of this kind of like knowledge, and giving like folks the language to like know, like, no, this is something that you could use like wherever you are in your work, in your interpersonal relationships, so on and so forth, of like this, you could show up in the world and it just be like transformational, and use your capital to thrive, right? The last piece, and this was really actually impactful for me, because I don't realize that this is like capital, right?
Hmm.
To like be willing to be the first. And I think in a lot of instances in like my circles, I'm often the first. And I didn't realize, why am I'm getting emotional right now. Like, I didn't realize like that is a form of capital, because like now I'm starting to realize like people are coming to my life and be like, you're a business owner. Like, how are you doing that? Like, what are you doing? I want to learn from you. I want to know like what's going on with you. How do you do that? Whatever. And it was very hard to like put this out there and tell my family like, I'm going to be a business owner. I'm going to quit a full-time job with benefits and all that, and not paying for health
Right.
insurance and stuff. But like, I I can see something more in what I'm wanting to build and create. And so I just didn't realize like language again that was a form of capital. So I really really love that.
Absolutely. And shout out to you because you have been so generous to me. Like, for those who don't know, which none of you do, behind the scenes, Jonathan helped me figure out how to get this whole tech situation together. So
It is all
I
good.
really, really appreciate you for that.
It's all good. It's all good. Now when you go on to other like shows and do all the amazing things that you're doing with elevating access, like you're gonna be looking crisp now. It's gonna be crisp.
You're going to be like, I'm responsible for that HD right there.
The HD, that 1080p. I love it. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, not a problem. And again, it's like that knowledge and things that I had to learn the hard way, just like passing it forward. Because that is a form, I didn't realize it, form of cultural community wealth. Love that, love that, love
Yeah.
that. Yeah. So we've talked about like the personal side, but what about you? What are some ways that folks can actually? You gave a few examples, but I'm curious for your own personal journey. Like, what was this like as far as like your professional like experience with community culture wealth?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's kind of ironic because I was running a program. It's a community mentorship program, which is in and of itself a form of community cultural wealth, right? Because
Mm,
we believe that kind of against the guru model where you have one person that's this like all knowing being. And so
mm,
we try to develop a community mentorship model where faculty, staff of color can connect to each other, but also connect to different folks throughout the university who can support them in different ways. And so it was there that I asked folks, what kinds of capital do you feel like you have? And these are people with PhDs,
mm,
right? Like full blown doctors, all the credentials, right? And they were talking about how they're not really sure that they had capital. And that really
mm,
blew my mind. And it saddens me because this is not the only space where I've heard something like that. And so I use community cultural wealth as a tool for them to be able to identify all the capital that they do bring so that when they enter into a room, like you said, Jonathan, like they feel like they are a badass and they belong there. And
yep.
so I use it in my coaching in that way and just reminding folks. I literally just had a conversation with one of my clients last night, who was like, I was looking at these job applications and I was feeling like maybe I'm underqualified. And I was like, just a friendly reminder that the world is run by people who are underqualified for their jobs.
You
So
better say it. You better say it. You better say it. I don't want to point any
let's not do
fingers.
that.
I don't want to point any fingers, but if we look
But
at Congress,
point.
if we look at Congress, a lot of ineptitude happening right now. Anyways,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
So community culture wealth could be a tool for self reflection and just reminding ourselves of, again, that inner greatness. I also would love to live in a world where our hiring practices are structured around community cultural wealth, right? So
yeah,
thinking about what an interview would look like if that was a form of capital that employers were actively valuing and prioritizing, right? If that was
mm,
part of how we made promotion decisions. So, maybe you bring a candidate in and they don't have the perfect language. But I always ask folks when I'm on a search committee, well, what access did they have to develop that exact terminology? And we have to
mm,
think about how systemically, especially folks of color, we have less access to that type of insider knowledge, right? Because there's not a lot of people that have paved the way before us. And so we're less likely to be mentored because people tend to mentor those that they resonate with that look like them. And if we don't
mhm.
look like anybody in the organization, who's going to mentor us, right? And so really thinking critically and using community cultural wealth as a critical reflection tool to think about our practices that we've normalized that really need to be complicated and redesigned in a way that centers equity.
I love that framing too, and that's a really good example as far as like even hiring practices, right? Because I remember when I was a recruiter, and even the people that I would like look at, I'm like, all right, so you didn't go to the same schools or have that same background, like your resume doesn't look as polished, but I would still like, all right, there's still some connecting points that I'm looking at that I know that would probably be a good fit. Like for prime example, a student athlete, like the discipline, the amount of work that they put in their work, and oftentimes like it didn't necessarily all the time like reflect the same way. I bring them in, I have a conversation with them. They're like, "Oh yeah, I have like incredible time management skills because I was literally doing two a days, and then also ended up with school with like a 3.9. Like the amount of time
Right.
management skills that actually go into that. Plus, and some of them worked a part-time job on top of schoolwork, on top of being a student athlete. So it's like there are different ways to even manage that and like examine that. And also, these folks are not less qualified. It's just their qualifications look different, and you have to be able to like see that as a hiring manager, as a recruiter, so on and so forth. How would you recommend for folks to get to that point? Say even like, I don't know, recruiter, hiring manager, even where decisions are being made around people, employees, so on and so forth. Like, how do folks get to a point where they can, see it differently, or see experience differently, or capital differently?
They hire you or I.
That is a cheeky and petty answer, but that is so 100% accurate. Because they can't do it on their own. No, but for
The
real, I'm
article
really
is
curious.
accessible, right? It's been
Yeah,
cited, I think, maybe like 50,000 times or something like that. It's such a,
yeah,
it's, I'm actually writing a chapter for a book on Black first generation student experiences, and like four different people who are writing chapters are all using this framework, right? So it's out there, there's a lot of resources to delve a little bit deeper if you're interested. But if you want to go even deeper, yeah, sometimes you got to bring in the folks who got the knowledge, the
yeah. You better
community. I'm
say that.
happy to share my navigational capital and help people figure out how to leverage community cultural wealth.
I love that. You better say that. You better hire us. Stop playing. Um, that's really really sick. Really really cool. Where else? Where are we headed in the next of our part here?
We're pretty much in the wrap up phase.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yo, Dr. Haywood, this is really, really incredible. I think folks are really like got something from this. I love the breakdown and the accessibility of like the way you even explained it. I think for
Thank
us, it really is. I don't know. Even for somebody who knew the framework, who has taught the framework, like to hear it explained in that way is like super, super helpful.
you. I'm so
And
glad.
y'all, I mean, it's there. It's out there. It's there. You could hire us to help y'all break it down, implement it. Um, and for all of you BIPOC leaders, Black belt leaders, whatever, like you got the capital. You got the knowledge. What you bring to the table is absolutely worth it. It is like more than worth it, actually. Um, so I hope you got some language out of this for sure.
Absolutely. And we would love to know what you all got. So drop that in the comments.
Absolutely. Yeah. Ask the questions. If whatever came up for y'all, we want to know. And then either myself or Dr. Haywood will share a little bit more wisdom, knowledge. No pick your brain sessions unless unless that's going to end up into something else. Because yeah, the era of free is, over. Awesome. Well, Dr. Haywood, this was wonderful. Thank you so much. Long time
Thank
coming, but
you.
obviously I knew it would not disappoint. You shared amazing stuff. I'm really, really excited. Yeah, this was really dope.
Always glad to share space with you. Thank you,
Yep,
Jonathan.
absolutely. All right, y'all. Take care. Talk to you soon.
Good night.